Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've had a chance to get a few refreshments. My name is Anthony Maldonado. I'm the coroner specialist for One Legacy. I'm very humbled by the fact that there's so many people in this room, and we're very proud to be honoring your loved one today. I want to thank Sheriff John McMahon for being our host today, for allowing us to have this ceremony at his headquarters. One of the things that we do at One Legacy is work very collaboratively with our coroner partners, and the San Bernardino County Sheriff-Coroner has been a stupendous partner over the years. Without their help, we would not be able to have you here today, because without their help and facilitation of donation, your loved ones probably would not have been donors. One of the things that I always like to tell everyone, that everyone seems to think and know that the coroners is only involved in the investigation of deaths and the manner, cost, and mode of death. But I like to stand here and tell you today that that is not the only thing that the Sheriff-Coroner does. They also promote life, they promote tissue and organ donation. So in your community in San Bernardino County, the San Bernardino County Sheriff-Coroner is saving lives and improving lives through tissue donation. So with much, we're going to go through the agenda. I hope you all have a copy of the agenda. We're going to have first an invocation from Father Andrew Lesko, which will be followed by some words from Sheriff John McMahon, and then Kathy Vasilopoulos. Michelle Post is from One Legacy is running late, so we'll go into Kathy. And then we'll hear from the donation community who's here to share their story. But without much further ado, I'd like to call up Father Andrew Lesko for an invocation so we could start our proceedings. Father.
Let us pray. Almighty God, our Father, we turn to you now in thanks and in praise, for you are the giver of our lives, and we know ourselves to be your own. For all that we have, and all because of your love, we offer you our thanks. For food and drink, for clothing and shelter, for friends and families, for all who serve us by their professions and their concern, for pleasant days and beauties of this earth, for books and schools and scholars, for our science and our learning and marvels of our modern age, for music and laughter and poetry and color, for help in times of need and strength in moments of weakness, for all those who have given of themselves so that others may enjoy life, for all that we have and are because of your love, we give you our thanks. Amen.
Thank you, Father Lesko, for that invocation. Now we have Sheriff John McMahon.
Good afternoon. On behalf of all of us in our department, welcome to Sheriff's Headquarters. It's our honor to have you all here today. We certainly appreciate the relationship that we have with One Legacy, and we're happy that you are all here today to share in this great ceremony. You already heard that as the Sheriff-Coroner, we oversee the Coroner's Division as well, which isn't the case in all 58 counties in the state, but is within our county. You heard a little bit already about folks in our business are charged with determining cause and manner of death, but that's not all we do. We work very closely with One Legacy to help make a difference in the communities that we serve, and certainly in our county. The donation of tissue is huge to help not only folks in our county, but we save lives and make a huge difference to the citizens in this county. And we're so thankful that you're all here today to share in this very special ceremony. Truly, what you folks do and working with One Legacy and our organization makes a big, big difference in our county. So we thank you very much for your selfless support, and thank you to One Legacy for our great relationship, because I think we truly make a difference. Thank you all.
Now we have Kathy Vasilopoulos, who's the Vice President of Organ Operations for One Legacy.
Thank you, Anthony, and good afternoon to all. I have the unique honor today to present to you our rendering of our Donate Life Rose Parade float that will be going down Colorado Avenue on January the 1st of 2016. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this float and what it means and how this is all going to proceed. And you all in this room are going to be an intricate part of that float. Every organ, eye, and tissue donation brings a journey of new life, health, and adventure for recipients. Recipients are given back the opportunity to live long and productive lives, to remain active in their communities and with their families. Donor families find comfort from the selfless and compassionate act of donation to help people they may never know. Living donors who selflessly give that gift to family members, friends, or even some give to strangers. So this float, if you can all see, I'll hold up. Right here, thank you. Is Treasure Life's Journey. And the inspiration for this went like this. Like an oasis discovered amidst a caravan's journey across the desert, organ, eye, and tissue donation renews hope and sustains life, much like that oasis. The 2016 Donate Life Rose Parade float, Treasure Life's Journey, features a colorful caravan with 60 donor medal-inspired floragraphs honoring the invaluable treasure of a deceased donor's life-saving gift. So on the float, 24 transplant recipients will be riding and continue to share in life's adventures allowed by the gift of organ and tissue donation. And then alongside 12 living donors walk carrying provisions of flower, extended fruit, symbolizing life-giving and enhancing gifts that have been given. The roses, the dedicated roses that you all will be participating in today, placed on the float for people touched by donation, create floral jewels that ornament the base of the float. The reason that we have the living recipients walking is to let the community know that you can give an organ and live a very productive life. You can run marathons, you can be an Ironman if that's your choosing. You can do all of the normal activities. So they're going to be walking 5 miles while the recipients are up there riding on the float. So as the world's most visible campaign to inspire organ, eye, and tissue donation, the Donate Life Rose Parade float inspires viewers to Treasured Life's journey by helping the over 1 million people in need of life-saving or life-enhancing transplants each year. And as a reminder, one person can save up to 8 lives through organ donation and more than 50 and counting, as we've been discussing today, through tissue donation. So if you haven't already, which I'm sure most of you have, register today to become an organ donor or tissue donor through www.donatelifeamerica.org. So this will be what you're part of on the first of the year going down Colorado Avenue, and we're very, very touched that you have chosen to be here and represent your loved one on the float. Thank you.
One Legacy has a huge number, I think almost 500 volunteers, which we lovingly call ambassadors. And they truly are ambassadors for life. They go out into the community, including the 7-county community that we serve, LA, San Bernardino, Riverside, Kern County, Santa Barbara, Ventura, and Orange County. They go out and they speak about their experience, and their message is basically to give out information, education about organ, eye, and tissue donation, and inspire others to donate. So with that, we're going to hear from the community right now. I would like to call up Mike Adams to tell his story, and I'm not going to give anything away. Mike has the full story that he will tell you right now. So come on, Mike.
No. Hello, everyone. First, I'd like to say how honored I am to share this ceremony with all of you today. I was born with cystic fibrosis. It's a genetic disease that destroys our lungs. And in growing up, I spent most of my life in and out of hospitals. When I wasn't in the hospital, I was at home getting IV treatments or breathing treatments. In the year 2000, I had a doctor tell me that if I didn't receive a lung transplant, I wouldn't live 2 more years. I'd be dead. At that year, in 2000, I got listed for a lung transplant. I went to Cedars-Sinai, met the surgeon, and I told him, he asked me, what do you want after your transplant? I said, if you can give me 1 good year without CF lungs, that would be it for me. I'd be happy. I was put on the waiting list, transplant wait list, and for the next couple of years, my health began to decline. I was in the hospital more. IV antibiotics weren't helping, and I went down to 17% lung function. On Thanksgiving of 2002, I was in a recliner, stuck in a recliner. I was on IV antibiotics going into a port in my chest, and I was on 8 liters of oxygen. If I moved, stood up, my heart would start racing, I would start gasping for air. That was my life. That night, I got really bad, and my wife said, I'm taking you to the emergency room. We went to our local emergency room where all the doctors knew me, and I was begging for prednisone, solumedrol, which would usually help my breathing. And they said, we can't give you any, Mike, because if you get called for your transplant, they won't be able to transplant you. They said, basically, just go home and wait. I wasn't comfortable with that because I didn't want to die that night at home. So I told my wife, drive me to Tarzana, where Dr. Ince, my doctor, pulmonologist, was, because him and I have an understanding, if I have to be put on the ventilator, he'll know when to pull the plug. We drove down to Tarzana. I went in the emergency room, and I was put on a BiPAP machine and put in the ICU. For the next week, I stayed in the ICU unit, not knowing if I was going to go on the ventilator or not. And on December the 5th, we decided to have the pastor who married us come in and read me my last rites. He came in and prayed for me and prayed for the best. The very next morning on December the 6th, my nurse came into my room and said, Mike, your doctor is on the phone and wants to tell you something. He told me that a pair of lungs had been found for me and that an ambulance was coming to take me to Cedars-Sinai. They drove me to Cedars-Sinai, and that night I was prepped and ready to go, and they started my lung transplant. At 1 in the morning, the doctors came out and told my family that he removed my old lungs, and they basically dissolved in his hands. The next morning, I woke up on a ventilator with brand new lungs. When I was taken off the ventilator, I was laying flat, which was really weird to me because I've never been able to sleep laying flat my whole life. And I thought something was wrong. But nothing was wrong. I had brand new lungs and I was breathing great. 14 days later, I was released from the hospital and I went home to start my new life with brand new lungs. Life was amazing. I went from 17% lung function and 92% lung function. I had brand new lungs inside my chest. 3 months after my transplant, I decided to write a letter to my donor family. It's all done anonymous. I wanted my donor family to know what a hero their loved one was to me. That this person not only saved my life, but gave me a much better quality of life than I had ever understood. Writing that letter wasn't easy. How do you say thank you for the gift that I'd received? I was up all night trying to write this letter. I sent it off and went through the process, and sometime later I got a letter back from my donor family. And just as I knew, the very first paragraph of the letter, his mother told me that this young 15-year-old boy named Torrey Howe was also her hero. She told me what a caring person he was and told me a bit about him and their relationship. He was her life. He was her only child. On December the 5th, he went to church rode to church on a bike with his friend, and he was gunned down by a gang member. When his mother found out that he was brain dead, she asked, "How do I start the organ donation process?" 5 people received organs from Tori. I was blessed enough to receive his lungs. The years since then, his mother and I, we have an amazing special bond. She's weird. She knows it. She'll call me out of the blue sometimes, say, "Are you wearing a jacket? It's cold out." "Are you feeling okay?" "Yeah, I'm feeling okay. Leave me alone." She's come to watch me shoot pool in Vegas. She's seen me play tennis. 2 years after my transplant, I went to the National Transplant Games in Kentucky or Minnesota, and I won gold medal in men's tennis. I did that with the help of his lungs. After my transplant, I went whitewater rafting in the Grand Tetons. I did that with his lungs. I went scuba diving with his lungs. In the past 2 years, I've climbed 63 flights of stairs up the second tallest building in LA with his lungs. Actually, after about the 40th floor, our lungs really felt it, but we made it. I did that for the American Lung Association. Life is amazing now. I can't tell you what her gift, his gift to me has done for my life. And December the 6th, which is our anniversary date, which we have lunch, every December 6th we have lunch together. It'll be 13 years since my transplant. And I always think back to that time when I asked for just one good year, and I've been blessed with 13. And it's all because my donor, my hero, and his mother said yes to organ donation. And you're all heroes in this room. I'm honored to be with all of you today, and thank you for letting me share my story.
I'm going to call up Mr. Bill Howe to come up and speak. But before that, we know that his mother is here in the audience. And I'd like you to stand up. And we'd like to say thank you to you for being brave enough to say yes. Now, Mr. Bill Howe.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bill Howe, as they stated. I'm Tori's uncle and Les' granduncle. And of course, Leslie is my niece. I was sitting home on a Friday night, December of 6, 2002. My phone rang and I answered. It was Leslie. I could hardly make out what she was saying. She had to give the phone to a friend of hers. All I heard was something about Tori being shot. And when I got the information from her friend, my brother and I shot over to the Arrowhead Regional Hospital. And we went into the emergency room. Tori's laying there, of course, all shot up and whatnot. And having worked in law enforcement for 25 years and homicide investigator at one time, I've seen everything, but never think it would happen to a family member. And of course, I was upset, but my niece made the right decision, and matter of fact, she helped catch the killer, believe it or not. She was returning to the church, to Temple Missionary Baptist Church, west side of San Bernardino. Some of you all might remember, because the news media made a big thing of this. They named him the choir boy, shot on the church steps. And that was, of course, in 2002, and it got a lot of publicity. Leslie drove up to the church to pick Tori up, and she saw this, she heard this commotion, the car alarm going off and so forth. She saw this guy hurrying away from the church and doing a furtive look at all police officers, looking over his shoulder. So she thought something was wrong. She's got the law enforcement in her family, in her soul, because between our families, there's probably about 10 or 12 people who've been in law enforcement, 3 generations, in the the Inland Empire and the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area. So she followed the guy, got a good description of him, and lost him, but gave the information to the law enforcement, San Bernardino PD, and they apprehended him that same night. Torrey was not many people know this, he had a beautiful singing voice. He drew a crowd of hospital staff workers and so forth to the room of my wife, who was hospitalized at the time, very serious condition. He sang to her in the room, and a number of hospital people showed up to hear where this wonderful voice was coming from. He probably would have made it somewhere later in life to a big time in the musical world. Torrey was a lovable kid, very lovable, and a handsome-looking boy. If you see his picture somewhere around here. Oh. Yeah. And, of course, his picture was all over the television stations and newspapers and all of that. But Michael left out part of the story so that I could tell it. We were having a family reunion in July of '04 in Ontario. And he and Leslie had been communicating, and she invited him to come to the reunion. And I don't think he wanted to come at first, but he finally showed up at the hotel, but he wouldn't come into the room. I guess he was afraid to come into a room of over 100 black people. But Leslie came and got me. I'm sort of the patriot of the family. And I went out, and the first time that I met him, I said, "Look, Mike, our family is like Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition. Don't worry about it. We got whites, blacks, Hispanics. We got everybody except Asians in our family." So he reluctantly came into the room, and we got him to tell his story. And what I did afterwards, I had just, myself and some others had completed a family tree. And I said, "You know what? You're part of the family now. You have Torrey's lungs. I'm going to take a picture of you, going to enter you onto the family tree," which I did. So he calls me Uncle Bill. I call him Nephew Michael. So he's part of the family. Torrey, well, One Legacy had a float in the year of 2005, the Kodak float. And Torrey's picture was on the float. And, you know, everyone back east got to see the parade and the picture on the float, except us out here, we were watching the wrong channel. It was on the reverse side of the float when it went by, so we didn't get to see it. However, and it won a prize too. And then in 2015, the early part of this year, first of the year, Michael was on the float, and he had an image of Torrey with him, holding the image of him, and that we did see. So anyway, I just thank Leslie and One Legacy for getting together and taking care of this, because, well, by the way, I have 2 cornea transplants, so I would be blind right now if I hadn't have got cornea transplants. But I'm seeing good today, in spite of what my wife says. "You can't see. What kind of driving are you doing?" But I had an eye checkup about a month ago, and the doctor said I'm seeing better than ever, so that takes care of that. So anyway, I just want to bring you up to date. This guy's a wonderful guy, and he and Leslie get along fine. I don't know why they don't get married myself. She treats him like a son. So that's my story. It adds to what has been already said. Thank you. By the way, if you don't have to get a knee replacement, don't get it because it's killing me.
Thank you, Mr. Howe, for that. I really want to thank all of the families that are here. You, like the Howes, are very, very brave in your decision to donate from your loved one. Right now, we're going to hear from Michelle Post, who's our manager for One Legacy's Donor Family Aftercare. Michelle, if you could come up. Thank you.
Thank you. So Tori was a hero, and his family have a story, but each of you have a hero. Now, there are also staff in the room, and there are volunteers in the room, and there are recipients and family members in the room, but just show of hands, I'd like to know, how many of you have ever experienced the death of someone close? You are not alone. Look at all of these hands. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about that journey and what it might look like, and maybe how you can help yourselves on that journey. Now, what I will tell you is that none of us believe that after today's ceremony that you will achieve what they call in psychology closure. Have you heard that word? Well, a favorite psychologist friend of mine says closure is for bank accounts, not love accounts. So the type of closure we hope you feel today is in getting validated that your loved one's decision to say yes, or your decision to say yes to organ, eye, or tissue donation was the right thing for your family. So in terms of looking at your grief journey, I like to think about grief sort of like the weather, but I don't mean Southern California weather where it's 85, 90 degrees in November. That's not the kind of weather. I think you would agree that it's far too sunny in Southern California to be compared to grief. But have you ever, no one in Southern California can drive when it rains, right? A little drizzle on the road and we're all a mess. Okay, that's much more like what grief does. Have you ever been driving in the rain where the fog is so thick and rainy and it's dark and you can barely see the cars around you, and maybe you've had to grip the steering wheel, for those of you that drive, just to try to not lose control of your car, not hit things around you and hurt other people, or avoid spinning out cars or other things around you that might hurt you? If you've experienced that, that can be what grief is like. Trying to do what you can to take care of yourself so you don't hurt other people or avoid those people that might hurt you. And when you do have the storms or clouds of grief, it can look like sadness or missing the person, being tired or clumsy, difficulty concentrating, feeling forgetful, maybe finding yourself looking in the oven for the ice cream, or maybe opening up the oven and finding out that you put the ice cream in there and didn't realize it wasn't in the freezer. Forgetting your keys, losing yourself. You might find yourself eating more or eating less, or sleeping more or less, or having nightmares, or dreams about the person who died, or wishing you could dream about the person who died. You might find yourself feeling irritable, like you're arguing with a shoe rack that won't let go of your shoe, and it's really not about the shoe or the rack. You might find yourself not enjoying things like you used to, or numbing out through overspending, overworking, keeping too busy, overeating, drugs, alcohol. You might find yourself feeling really angry in a completely illogical way. There was one man that I worked with, the night that his wife died, he drove by McDonald's, which was open 24 hours. And he found himself really enraged at McDonald's for being open. He just wanted McDonald's to close down that day and recognize what he was going through, like the old days in small communities where the whole town would shut down and honor someone's loved one while the hearse was going through town. We don't have that kind of society anymore. And he knew it wasn't logical, but I see a lot of you shaking your heads. Grief isn't logical, is it? Now, sometimes grief can look more like sporadic sunshine. Maybe it's shining on other people, but not on you. So if you've ever been driving in a place where it's kind of still raining on you, but maybe you're in a freeway overpass and you can see off in the distance, it's shining through the clouds on some other part of the city you can't get to. Grief can feel like that sometimes too, where someone in your family seems to be doing okay, but you feel pretty miserable and dreary. And when those moments happen, rather than judging that person for grieving wrong or right, or yourself for grieving wrong or right, just recognizing that different people in your family and your community experience grief differently. I encourage you to let that person's relief remind you that sooner or later the sun will shine on you. You'll have your sunny days too. But when your days are cloudy, find ways to release or express your feelings. So rather than what I was talking about earlier, keeping too busy or moving on, as they say, or getting over it, that doesn't really happen in grief. Instead, slow down and actually feel your feelings and find a way to process them. Some people like to journal, lots of healing in writing, or gardening, or cooking, or listening to your loved one's favorite music, looking through pictures, allowing yourself to sing. You could set a timer and then just let yourself look at those mementos for about 30 minutes. And when that timer goes off, go splash water on your face, take a shower, take a break, but make an appointment with your grief, because it is not time that heals all wounds. It is what you do with the time that will heal your wounds. So don't be afraid to try psychotherapy, or if you need a grief support group, we have one in our Redlands office, or we have an online Facebook support group, and lots of families share with each other 24/7 on that group, or we have referrals for you. So don't be afraid to contact us at One Legacy, and we'll connect you to what works for your family. Also remember that your grief is unique, and what works for one person doesn't work for another person. So for instance, I see some kids here. Children grieve too. This week is National Children's Grief Awareness Week, and children grieve in very different ways. They need to play to help with their grief. So be patient with them in meetings like this where they're fidgety and looking for something to draw. It's okay. Also, people sometimes want alone time where other people want togetherness, and there's lots of men and women in the room. You all raised your hands. Men grieve very differently than women. Men often like to do things or memorial projects, and women often like to talk about their feelings, which I'm a woman, so I'm not making fun of us. But then you have a man in your life, and you walk over to him and you say, "Honey, what are you thinking about?" And he says, "Nothing." And then we get mad at him like he's grieving wrong or he's not doing it right. When in fact, I've been told from neurologists that there's a part in a man's brain called the nothing compartment where he actually has to go to it about 2 to 4 times. I see the men laughing in the audience. I know you know what I'm talking about. 2 to 4 times a day just to veg out for a couple minutes and reset. And if we catch them at that wrong time, ladies, please help me help you by just giving them a break and not judging them in that moment. Come back later. Ask them to come back to you later. Now, also, some people feel really comforted going to the cemetery or memorials. Others don't. One teenager I worked with did not like going to visit his mom at the cemetery. And so we had to ask him, well, why? Why don't you like going there? And he said, I don't feel close to her there. I don't feel her spirit is there. So then we went further and we said, well, where do you feel your mom's spirit? Where do you feel close to her? And he said, her closet, because it still smells like her. I like to go there and spend time sometimes. So again, don't judge the other people in your family or your community for grieving wrong or right. Just know what works for you. And just as we have to adjust to the stormy weather, when someone dies, their body died, but our love for them didn't switch off. It didn't stop, and we have to adjust to what we do with those feelings. So think about who could help you do the things that person used to do or the roles they used to play, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Because when the sun shines again, you can still honor and remember your loved one. You can do things in their memory, cook their favorite meal, go to their favorite restaurant, and whatever you choose, I encourage you to find ways to laugh again and love again while remembering and honoring your loved one and the other people in your life still alive to support you. Now, sometimes grief can show up like the sunsets. Have you ever seen a beautiful sunset with the clouds that are still in the sky after a storm and the lights are orange and purple? It's like the most fantastic sunsets happen when there's still clouds in the sky after a storm. And on the sunset of your loved ones' lives, your heroes' lives, You or he or she said yes to donation and helping other people. And through their sunsets of their life, we've been able to get to know you, support you, and we're honored to do so. But in all honesty, I think I speak for everyone here that's a staff member of the Sheriff's Office or a staff member of One Legacy. We wish your loved ones were still alive and that we could have met under very different circumstances. But we're honored that you made the decision to say yes to donation. And we're here to support you in that process. So the last thing I'd like you to do is, you've heard Tori's story, but your loved one has a name. Maybe you called them mom, dad, sister, funny nickname, or just a first name. I'd like you to think about what you called that person on a regular basis, and I'd like you to say it out loud with me on the count of 3. So on the count of 3, just say their first name or their nickname out loud, if you're willing, and we'll clap for all of them together, okay? 1, 2, 3. Beautiful. Let's clap for everyone, please. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Michelle. That was great. Right now, we're going to call each family individually. If Sheriff John McMahon and Kathy Vasilopoulos can come up to the stage. We will present each of the family representatives. If you could have 2 or 3 people at the most at the stage, that would be great. After you get your rose vial, you can go write your message in the back. And then we have a basket in the back where you could put your vial, rose vial. And we will have those vials. They will be put on the float on December 29th by volunteers. So on January 1st, 2016, your rose dedication vial with a rose will be in the rose dedication garden. So right now, we're going to call each family name individually. Yes, on the stage, and I will pass the family of Tony Aceves, if they could come up to the stage. There's a Thank you. The family of Daniel Calles. There's some tissue at the tables if you need some. Thank you. The family of Rick Curtis. Yes, thank you for going to the side. We don't want you to trip on the camera. Thank you. The family of Richard Gordon. Thank you. The family of Dennis King, Sr. Thank you. The family of Blair Lemire. The family of Juana Munoz. The family of McDaniel Vasquez. He might not be here. McDaniel Vasquez again. Okay. The family of Andrew Wilson. If there's any other family here that we didn't call your name, please see me afterwards, and we could do something about your certificate. Again, thank you, Sheriff. Kathy, thank you. I'd like to remind you to please place, after you're done with the dedications, to place them in the basket, because we do need them so we could put them on the Rose Parade float on December 29th. With this, I have to close the ceremonies, let you know that we still have plenty of refreshments. We also have some takeout boxes in case you want to take some food home. We have plenty. And I'd like to thank you personally and on behalf of our host, Sheriff McMahon and One Legacy. Thank you for coming to this event. We truly, truly honor you and your loved ones today. So thank you, and may I wish you a happy Thanksgiving. May it be a safe one and a bountiful Thanksgiving. Thank you very much.